Hello, everybody. My name is Tech or Sean, whichever one works for you. I'm a mental health coach for my day job. I just want to let you know that this interview is different than what I do in my sessions, but it is to sort of like these talks are a little bit sort of like mental health focused, which is why you see all of the sort of like Ostara branding around. Um, Throughout this interview, Pyro and I won't really be responding to chat unless Pyro sees something in chat that she particularly wants to respond to. She can. My notifications are paused as I fixed with Dead Man's Alert. Any questions that you have, like at the end, I will like ask like, does anybody have any questions, and we can talk about those. And with that, this is my friend Pyro, who
Hi.
is hi, who is someone who has sort of like built their life in a way that I admire, and seems to have found a certain amount of like happiness and contentment. And one of the things that one of my mentors says that I really like is this idea that mental health is more than mental illness. And so, in starting to have these talks, I just sort of wanted to talk a little bit about like how Pyro sort of like put together her life. And a cool thing that just like a little backstory is that Pyro and I have actually been doing talks kind of similar to this for the past 2 years. And this is the third, but it is the first of sort of a series of interviews that I'm going to try to do with like different members of the community. So, hi Pyro, how are you?
I'm good. I had messaged you, but now I think it's okay. I thought I heard myself in your like through your headset, but I think I'm okay.
Oh, that
Um,
would be very odd
yeah.
because you're in my headphones. Yeah, I that would be very strange. I'm not sure how that would be possible.
I don't know. I like coughed, like like cleared my throat, and I heard it play back, so I was confused for a second. But
Maybe
I think it's
we
good.
maybe we cleared our throat at the exact same time.
That'd be weird. But
That
also, I fixed my microphone issue. I was reading about it while we were doing the introduction, and
oh.
one thing they said to do was to make sure it was plugged into the PC itself and not into a hub, a USB hub, because I think it wasn't
Mm.
getting enough power, which is weird because it's always been like that, and the issues just now started happening. But I did it, and I can't hear any more crackling, so we're good.
That's great. So you plugged your headphones directly into the computer instead of
Yeah.
into a hub, which gave them enough power that you now no longer hear crackling.
Yes, it was really annoying,
That's great.
especially during the music, because like we were like rocking out to the music.
Totally, totally. Yeah, there are not enough USB ports on computers for like how many things people do with their computers nowadays.
Yeah,
Uh
I think I have maybe 4 or 5 on my PC, and then
right.
I have a hub that has 8.
Yeah,
So
and like
enough.
hubs don't work for everything.
No, like I have it for like my webcam and my keyboard, my mouse, my stream deck, I think, but like my crucials, like headphone, headset, a couple other things go into my computer.
For sure. Um, so a couple of things. The first is that um, we can talk for as long or as short as you like.
Okay.
Um, Anytime that you feel like wrapping up, feel free to let me know. If we come to sort of like a natural stopping point, then I'll do my best to say like seems like we're at a good stopping point.
Okay.
But
I'm a little nervous now that we're actually here.
don't I'm the one that you're just talking to a friend. Me,
Okay.
I'm the one who needs to be nervous and do good. So I had like a little list of things that I put together that we might talk about. We can
Sure.
talk about any of these things. We can talk about some of these things. We can talk about none of these things. It's totally up to you. So,
Okay.
in terms of this idea of sort of like talking about how you built your life, a few of the things that seemed prudent were things that you are proud of, your career, your relationship, your relationships, your art, and then if there's sort of like any value that I can provide to you, then that as well.
Mhm.
One caveat that I want to give is that, like, typically in a sort of like, coaching session, I would not talk about myself. However, that is not really what this is. So
Mhm.
if there's at any point something that like you want to ask me, feel free. Um, yeah. What do you think?
I think that sounds good. You were bringing up a point about like my successes and in specifically in a work-related setting, and there's been a lot of shit happening lately that I would be interested to kind of talk about.
Okay,
Um,
yeah. Lay it on
yeah.
me.
Well, I can't go into too much detail because some stuff is under like confidentiality,
Like an
but
NDA.
I can talk a little bit about what I do for people because I think it's really really fascinating and a lot of people love to hear about it.
Y-
Apparently,
Yeah,
um,
that sounds great.
cool.
NDAs
Okay.
always like whenever somebody says like I had to sign an NDA for my work, like that just always seems like, big adult, it seems like you have like a fancy career if you have to sign NDAs.
It doesn't have to mean that. It could just mean because we work in a particular field that we have other competitors like other laboratories. You want to keep your trade secrets. In our case, like how we get our samples and things like that, but like it's something that we shouldn't tell the entire world,
Sure.
stuff like that. So it doesn't have to be like a super fancy thing. It's just, they're just trade secrets,
Okay, cool. Cool.
but
Yeah,
it's
so
not as
so so
fancy.
talk to me about what you can in terms of what you do for work.
All right, I have to try to think about it to see how I want to break it down. Lately, okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, I work in a startup stem cell laboratory, and we do research and we do manufacturing of stem cells. And it's really, really cool. I've worked there for almost 3 years now, and I started out as a I am a mad scientist, yeah. I started out as a technician, just like working with the animals and doing behavioral tests. We worked with rats and sometimes mice. And then I became a researcher, so I did a lot more like surgeries and actually working with the cells and things like that. And as of like how long ago? 2 months ago, I got a promotion to become the lab manager, which is really really cool. Very proud of myself, but it just means that lately we've all been kind of dealing with a lot more stress, and myself in particular. Now that I'm the manager, I'm the person that people come up to me and like ask for approval of things or my opinion in things, and it's just been really stressful.
Mm,
And I know we were talking a couple weeks ago about like the anxiety that I have and kind of like an imposter syndrome where I felt like I shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. Um, I think 3 of my 6 coworkers have like masters in this field, and they're researchers or senior researchers. And like I have a bachelor's in ecology and evolution, and to get to this point with just a bachelor's is a little overwhelming.
mm,
um so it's been a lot to handle this transition where we had somebody who, like, she was like our goddess. Like we could come to her for anything, whether it was like a cell question or a manufacturing question or even like a maintenance issue. She was just all around
she knew
so
everything.
helpful. She knew everything. And she'd only been there a year longer than me, so she wasn't even there that long, but she just had so much more experience. And so once she left, like having to like step into those shoes was a lot to handle. And so lately, within like the last couple of weeks, it just seems like a lot of our equipment is not working and a lot of our experiments are not working. And like my boss has been gone on vacation this week,
Mm,
so a lot of us have been like just like not gossiping, but like more chit chatty, especially about like our feelings about the whole situation.
mm,
Thanks, dead man. Um, and it just seems like a lot of us are pretty fearful or worried about like the state of the company when it comes to like the future. If we're not having like successful manufacturing going on, how are we supposed to make money to keep the lab working? And that's like our biggest fear right now. I keep trying to be optimistic for everybody and just say, okay, we shouldn't like go down this rabbit hole yet. We should talk to our first boss and like let him like quell some of those fears, because like there's like we're the bottom of the line of the chain. We don't know what's going on higher up, and so we shouldn't like be thinking about this kind of stuff. But I still think about it.
Yeah, it sounds terrifying. Like, first of all, first of all, like, congrats on your promotion. That sounds awesome.
Thank you.
But this thing that you talked about is sort of like stepping into the shoes of a goddess, as you described them. Like
Yeah.
that alone sounds absolutely terrifying. You know, like I'm just sort of imagining, like, for anyone who's listening, like, imagine somebody that you really, really admire and that you think does like an amazing job, and you're like, man, like, I could never imagine doing all the things that they do. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, by the way, you're going to be doing my job in about, and like, it just sounds terrifying. And then on top
Yeah.
of that, you also have like what sounds like job insecurity, that
I don't know if I do, but
as you
that's
look
the
at,
fear we have.
yeah, as you look at the company, you're like, I just don't know how viable this is going to continue to be if things continue to go the way that they're going right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds really scary.
Yeah. And it sucks, and I feel bad not for myself, but like for the new researcher we just brought on board.
Hmm.
Like here, like welcome to the company. We might not be around for in 6 months, something like that. But like
Wow.
that's what I'm trying not to think about, because it's like I have no idea if that's what would happen. Like when it comes down to it, it's all financial,
Mm-hmm.
because my coworkers are like, what if, because we're not being successful, what if our main investor just decides not to support us anymore? And it's like she's like a multi-billionaire, um and so what if she just like decides not to support us anymore? And it's just scary to
Gosh,
think about.
dang. So then, one of the questions that I have sort of from that is like, is this what you like when you were little Pyro? Were you like, when I grow up, I want to work in a lab? Like, is this
Mm.
what you wanted to do, or like, how did that sort of come about?
For a very long time, when I was working here and I would tell people about my job, and they'd say, wow, that's so cool, that's amazing, that you're perfect for that job. I'm like, yeah, but it's not my passion. Like
Hmm.
my passion is working with wildlife and nature and stuff. I don't know why my camera keeps flickering, by the way.
I
I'm
don't know
seeing it in,
either, but it's okay.
I bumped up the priority, but I don't, it's not a difference.
Okay,
um but yeah, I kept saying, no, it's not my passion. This is just to help pay the bills, because it does pay quite a bit more than like my zookeeping job, for example.
sure.
Once I got researcher position and I started learning more, and I was actually like feeling like I was of value, I wasn't just doing like side stuff just to kind of
Just
help
like
the
busy
lab run. I
work.
was actually like doing like surgeries and whatnot.
Yeah.
Then I started to appreciate it a little bit more, and actually like the fact that people like my own coworkers told me like this is a really good job for me, like I'm really good at what I do here, like
Hmm.
that made me feel like, okay, like I can do this. Like I never thought of working in a lab. I always thought like I'm really bad at chemistry, so I wouldn't fit in really well, and I don't like being stuck in a lab setting.
Hmm.
And I do need breaks every once in a while, and I'll go outside. And then once I became lab manager, I was just like, okay, like the fact that I'm financially being given my worth, and then like people tell me I'm really good at what I do and I can help teach people at the same time, my other passion, now I'm like actually really happy with what I do. And then to also have the bonus of possibly like doing real science and like manufacturing and like making a difference in people's lives once it goes to clinical trials is really, really cool, and something to, I don't have to brag about it, but I do like to brag about it.
Yeah,
But we're
something.
not at that point anymore. Like right
Right.
now, like nothing's happening. So it's like, am I can't brag about it right now.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I work for this lab and it's really cool, but like we're failing right now,
We don't know if we'll be around in another 6 months.
Yeah, so it's, I could see myself with the experience that I'm getting applying to another laboratory if
Hmm.
anything happened, and that's why like I'm trying not to think about the future, but I'm also like I'm trying to learn as much as possible here. I've learned everything I do at my job, I learned at my job. because I just didn't have those same qualifications. And so I think that just, repeatedly learning as much as I can so that I become more valuable, so that if something happens, is probably like the best thing, because there's a lot of laboratories here in Southern California, specifically San Diego. Um, but then, at least I'm of value.
And so if let's say in 6 months that the lab sort of does go under, uh, given that this was not sort of originally your passion, and what I heard from you is that you sort of like found a love for this through like, oh, like my coworkers are saying that I've done a good job. Oh, like I could be making a difference in people's lives. Oh, this pays well. Um, Given that it didn't start out as your passion, do you
Mhm.
think that you would pursue the same line of work, or do you think that you would like uh, look at incorporating things that more involve your original passion?
I think I wouldn't specifically try to pursue it, but I think it would mean that, in the future, if I need to look for more work, there are definitely more opportunities available,
Hmm,
especially living in California where it's so expensive. Like this lab work does pay for, like, just does take care of me.
for sure.
Whereas like zookeeping, I was making minimum wage. I wasn't working full time, so maybe if I worked full time, it would be a little bit better. But still, it's minimum wage in California, and that was at $13 an hour, and I was like living paycheck to paycheck.
It's
So
it's crazy to me that zookeeping is a minimum wage job because it seems so specialized. Like it seemed like not anyone can zookeep.
right, this place specifically, I think, was like that because we were just so much smaller.
Hmm,
All of our funding came from grants and donations and whatnot. Whereas like take like LA Zoo for example, they work through the city,
okay.
so they can get better funding. And so we were just a small private zoo,
Okay.
so it made more sense. But it's like the fact that you would pay us minimum wage but require bachelors,
Hmm.
like that doesn't
That's
seem.
weird. Yeah, it
That's one
doesn't
reason
line
why I
up.
left. I didn't feel like I was worthy by
Or
working there.
that yeah, that like
As cool as it was.
you weren't getting paid what you were worth.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Yeah. Uh
And now I feel like I am.
yeah, I think that that in itself is something that is um really, how do I say this? Really sort of special about you, Pyro, is that like it seems like as you have been sort of hunting around for work and sort of finding something that makes you happy, one of the things that you really take into consideration is like, am I getting paid what I'm worth? Which I think sometimes, a lot of times, like people will be unhappy with what they're being paid. Like they're like, I don't
Hmm.
make enough money. But I don't often hear people talk about like, hey, like, what do I think that I'm actually worth? How did you sort of like come to figure that out?
I think because I struggle with finances as an adult for most of my life. Like I remember before I worked at the zoo, or like kind of like at the same time I worked at the zoo. Okay, so when I started working at the zoo, I was only working on weekends. They didn't need me there on the weekdays. So I was like, okay, well, I can't just work weekends. So I got a job working at a photography studio for the weekdays. And I had worked for the studio when I was living back in our hometown for a while. I was just doing more secretarial work, but I came to like the sister, or in this case, brother company, in another city, and actually worked as a photographer. And I was doing that just to help out during the summers to do like ID photos for schools. And I was getting paid $100 a day for 5 hours, so $20 a day, or $20 an hour.
Mm,
And that was great because it was all under the table. And so when I came to this job, they offered me like a full-time position there, and they asked what I was making, and I told them $100 a day. They were like, okay, well, we can't do $20 per hour for 8 hours a day, but we'll keep the ending total the same. So we'll pay $13 an hour to equal that $100 a day
mm,
via 8 hours. And so it's like, okay, I'm back down to minimum wage for being a photographer, and not just being a photographer, but also doing the secretary work, also doing all the Photoshop work, going out to schools, getting up at 5 in the morning to go to these schools and set up and stuff. And it's like, I just dropped back down to nothing.
mm.
And uh, I was tired of it very quickly. And so as soon as I was able to work at at the zoo more full time, I quit that job very fast. But I encountered the same kind of thing there. I think there was a lot of sexism in the company because there were only four photographers. I was the only female, and like I feel like they would intentionally not send me to work at like sports events.
Hmm.
They would only send the men, and I was a way better photographer than two of them.
Hmm.
They would like keep me they would like let me do like club photos and things like that, but then most of the time I was staying at the lab doing like the senior photos with like the shawls and stuff,
Yeah.
and then also doing like all the Photoshop work because I knew I was good at that, and everybody else was so bad that I was like correcting everybody's photos.
Hmm.
And so it just sucked. Like I felt like I was just not, again, I was just not of any worth there,
Hmm.
or however you would say that. So I was very happy to leave. But I just felt like I've always dealt with that. It happened at my vet teching job too, where there was a bit of sexism and favoritism.
Yeah.
And so I think for a long time, like I was always just like at the bottom,
Hmm.
not appreciated.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I was tired of it.
It almost sounds like you were so good at sort of like the grunt work, for lack of a better word, that
Mm-hmm.
like they needed you there. And so they actually kind of like mistreated one of their better employees in order to, like get what needed to be done, which unfortunately, like, I think is actually pretty common. Where like if
Mm-hmm.
somebody, so like for instance, like the analogy that's coming to mind is like with teaching, where like if a teacher is really good at dealing with difficult kids, sometimes what like head honchos will do is they'll like shove all the difficult kids toward that teacher
Mm-hmm.
because the teacher can handle it. But the problem is then like that teacher gets super burnt out and isn't helping kids. Like they could be helping more if they were not having to constantly deal with like tough kids. And
Makes
so
sense. Yeah.
it sort of seems like that is what was happening to you, is that like because you were fulfilling a need, instead of sort of like saying, "Oh wow, like this person is performing really well, we should move them up." They were like, "Okay, they're performing really well. Let's keep them there and use everybody else to do the things that like that these people can't do and she can do."
Yeah, and for a long time, uh, even now, I feel like I've not gotten better at it, so I'm trying to work on it. I tend to settle,
Mm,
and I don't speak up when I'm uncomfortable regarding like things in the workplace, or like be like I never want to be the person to come to like my boss and say I cannot handle this, I can't do this,
mm,
or I need help, or I need to take a break. I don't want to ever be that person. But so I think because of that, I end up like just like, okay, yeah, I can help you. Okay, yeah, I can do this, I can do that. And so like I end up just getting all this extra work. But because I'll handle it, I won't be happy in the end. But because it'll get done, I think that my bosses or supervisors feel like they can keep doing that because like I'm someone they can depend on, you know.
yeah.
So that's something I'm trying to work on too.
And so do you feel like you have settled in some way in your current position?
Um, I think it's just still a little bit stressful now just because of the whole transition period and then with all these new things we're working on. But I'm getting better, at least with my own coworkers. Like, yes, I'm the manager and yes, they should be able to come with me, but I'm getting better at saying I need to handle what I'm working on right now first, and then
Mm,
I can come help you later, instead of
gotcha.
like feeling like I need to go right, like stop what I'm doing right now, help my coworker, and then get back. And then I like not ruin my progress, but the attention is not there.
For sure. So
It's not
like,
consistent
yeah,
focus.
what I'm sort of hearing there is like you're getting better at setting boundaries, where if your coworker comes up while you're in the middle of something, you'll say like, "I can help you with that, but let me finish this first, and then like I can continue,
Yeah,
I can help you out with that."
yeah, and I think that's been working a lot.
Awesome. Awesome. And then uh how like so if knock on wood that it doesn't, but if the lab goes down, and you are sort of like out of a job, are
Hmm.
you like how do you handle that? Like are you okay to like be able to lose your job and then start hunting, or like
Mm.
how does that work for you?
Well, I mean, I'm very, very lucky in my housing situation,
Mm.
living with your own parents.
Yeah.
Um, so the fact that I've been able to do that, it's almost been a year now that I lived here, and be able to save up money enough to have like a savings, I could potentially like not have to job hunt right away or
Mm.
not have to like transition jobs right away.
Mm.
But I don't like that idea because like I don't like to be without work because what if like the job market crashes or what if like I missed a really really good opportunity by just like taking time off. So like I think I would be okay. And I know that my boss and my supervisor, who's kind of like a consultant now, he's the one that kind of trained me on everything. They both said that we can get like letters of recommendation from them, um, and so I think that'd be very valuable. And they know people in surrounding labs, so I don't think it would be an issue to find lab work nearby. But then I think it would also be interesting to see if I chose to like look elsewhere, like other than lab work.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I probably would just to keep it like even, like if it was like experience that I had and also like the pay was equal, then I would feel better about like transitioning jobs. But if it came down to like this job not existing, then maybe I would be more open to finding something completely different. But
For sure. What
who
what
knows?
kind of things, if you were to transition to something different, what kind of things would you consider?
There are some wildlife places out here,
Mm-hmm.
especially places doing research. But I'm also not opposed to moving by that point. I think
Where would you
just
want to move?
like getting a fresh start somewhere. But
Where would you want to move?
I think what I would do is there are a lot of good job boards to find work all around the country.
Mm.
I think I'd probably apply first, um, and see what was out there and what the pay was like for where I would be living.
Sure.
Um, and then kind of just be open to anywhere. I would like the idea of moving to Washington because it's cool. And my parents are moving up there, so it'd be nice to still be near family. But I'm
Sure.
also open. It is also expensive, but I also I wouldn't mind just trying something completely different. I've lived here all my life.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah. So like,
So I'm like kind of accepting what the negatives that might come soon or
yeah,
sooner or later.
yeah. It's really cool to hear because when I hear like my company might close in 6 months, that sounds like terrifying panic. Like uh, overwhelming stress. But what I hear from you is like, yeah, like it is a little scary. And if it were to happen, one, I would be okay. And
Mm.
two, it actually might sort of like open things up in kind of an exciting way for me. Where like, if this isn't my career for the rest of my life, like, hey, like I could go somewhere else, try something new. And
Yeah.
that might actually kind of be exciting.
Yeah, and I think it's something to be said at how much I've been able to achieve and learn at this job, despite the experience I have or the schooling that I have. That I think that could make me a very valuable person,
Yeah,
valuable employee. Knowing that I can kind of learn anything pretty quickly and be pretty good at it too. Not to like toot my own horn or anything, but like I'm pretty talented, um, and can learn a lot of stuff. So I think that that kind of gives me an upper hand, and then having those letters of recommendation to kind of back that up say a
yeah.
lot about me. So
Yeah, I think that speaks to a very important concept that I've come to understand about job hunting in general, which is this idea that like if you are job hunting and you're worried about qualifications, the truth is that like jobs can teach you how to do the job. What they can't teach
absolutely.
you is like being a nice person to be around or like being passionate and like dedicated to your job.
Hmm.
And so those qualifications mostly are like to deter people from like putting in applications so that HR doesn't have to go through as many resumes. But
Hmm.
like the truth is that like if you know how to job hunt and like you are willing to work hard and learn, like you can really learn any job.
Yeah,
And
if you have like some people just don't have the skill to be open to learning new things.
yeah.
Like my own, like some of my own coworkers are very iffy around like blood and surgical things happening, and I'm like, that's cool to me. Like I was a vet tech, I took anatomy in high school, I'm like, there's all these things that like I'm very passionate about learning in general,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not grossed out by learning a lot of stuff. Like I'm trying to learn this new, we're all trying to learn this new machine. It's not new, we've had it for forever, but we've never had to use it.
Mm-hmm.
It's called a flow cytometer,
Ooh.
and basically it like shoots a laser beam through a sample of cells and tells you exactly how many cells you have,
Wow.
what they look like, how big they are, the complexity of them. And it's very cool, but it's very, very complicated. And it's, to me, it's like, it's a challenge. Like if I can learn flow, like nobody knows flow. And if I can learn flow, like that just gives me one more upper hand against somebody else. And to know flow and only have a bachelor's in Eco Evo, like, damn, this person's really impressive.
Mm.
Like they're learning so much stuff. That's what I like. Like the best way I can describe it is, okay, so like, you know, like when you like achievement hunt in video games,
Mm-hmm.
like yeah, you can complete like the main storyline, but I like going off and like doing all the little achievements just so I can get all like the titles that you can like apply to your character. Like in World of Warcraft, you can like have a title for like botanist because you like collected all like one of every single plant or whatever. I like the idea of like having all these like titles or descriptions of things that I can do and have done and can do well. Like that's what I view life as, is just a way to like just
Achievement
learn
hunt.
everything,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
you're a,
know?
you're a you're a side quester.
I'm a side quester. I hate completing the main storyline because what if it's like the end of the game and you can't go back and play more side quests or do more achievements? Like the credits just roll right afterwards, you know?
Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that what I really sort of like my like coachy bullshitty interpretation of that is that like you have really found I don't know if it is how you have always been or if it's something that you've discovered like throughout your time living life, but
Mhm.
like it seems like either way you have found how to sort of like really enjoy the journey rather than the destination. You're just sort of
Absolutely.
like, I'm loving the ride.
Yeah, and I think for a long time it wasn't like that. I think I was talking to you about it, how like this job was just like a transition before going to grad school and doing something in wildlife and what my actual passion is.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's kind of transitioned into like, this job is okay to stay at,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe not in the end, but for the time being it's okay to stay at, and you know, still create value and still make something meaningful even if it wasn't my original passion.
Yeah. And I'm sort of okay where I'm at and okay if it changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like also just sort of and maybe this lends itself to or like helps out with the first part, which is just sort of like a deep passion for learning that I think when
Yes.
you really distill it sounds like when you really distill sort of like all of your passions and everything that you enjoy doing, what it really sort of comes down to is like I love learning.
I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so because of that, you're able to much more easily sort of enjoy the journey that you're on because there's so much to learn in everything that you do.
Yeah, I like being able to tell people that, you know, sure, I worked at a movie theater as my first job. It's a minimum wage job. I mean, I guess all my jobs were minimum wage jobs. But then I worked as a photographer, I worked as a vet tech, I worked as a zookeeper. Now I'm a freaking researcher slash lab manager. It's like, these are cool stories to tell, and cool experiences that I can share with people. And then the other cool thing is being able to have these jobs that like I can keep that knowledge for like real life, like when it comes to like vets, for veterinary work, for example, like taking care of like dogs and cats. I know so much more than just that regular person, a regular non-educated person, when it comes to like vaccines or like illnesses and things like that. So they're all things that I can keep that knowledge for real life situations or to help other people.
Hmm. Yeah.
Or like when it comes to zookeeping, like my new coworker, we were talking about zoos and how she always had like a bad opinion of zoos and like how like animals should be set free and stuff. And I'm like, well, here's like the real thing about zoos and like the good that they bring in. And she was like, oh, I'm so happy I talked to you because like I have this like negative feeling about negative opinion all about zoos, but like I would love to learn more, and like you're the perfect person because you actually worked in this setting. So it's nice to be able to like change people's opinions around just because of the experience I've had.
Yeah, yeah.
Hi Ari, thanks for
Help
stopping in.
helping with that through your learning, you're able to also help educate people.
Yeah, and that I think overall I wouldn't say my true passion, but it is one that like I think I will always carry with me.
For sure. Hmm.
Like even as a manager, like I'm still training people, I'm still teaching people, and that feels really good.
Totally. Yeah. Oh, one of the other things that stood out to me is you were talking about how basically like every job before this one was like a minimum wage job. And now like
Mm-hmm.
you're making more than like the average American.
Yeah.
Um that just seems cool that like just because you work I feel like there's this conception that people have that you sort of have to like work your way up the ladder, that like if you're
Mm-hmm.
starting in a minimum wage job, like it's going to take forever to get to like some kind of very nice lush paying job. But it seems like depending on how you navigate things, like you can actually make pretty huge leaps.
Yeah, I only started looking for a new job. I mean, not because I lost my job as zookeeping. I was just tired of it. So it wasn't like there was like a. I mean, it was in the middle of COVID as well, so things were kind of opening up. This job wouldn't have opened up because of COVID.
Hmm.
We were a very small company in general, so it's not like they laid off a bunch of employees or something. But I was so tired of. So because of COVID, we weren't going to schools anymore, and because my favorite part about zookeeping wasn't really the animal care, it was the taking animals to schools and teaching kids about like taking like oh, I could just think about it, I get so happy, like taking a porcupine out of its cage and like holding a porcupine in your hand and like having the kids just like they're just flabbergasted at what a cool animal just popped out of a cage, or like the servals that come jumping up on the table, like that just makes me so happy. And we weren't doing that anymore,
Hmm.
and we weren't really having birthday parties. We were having tours, but like in the middle of summer having to wear your masks around, and the rest of the time like my boss got like funding, like government funding because of COVID, like for companies and for businesses, and instead of using that to like pay us a little bit extra because we weren't working as much, he would just make us work more and spend the money on like fixing up enclosures and like doing more maintenance building things.
Hmm.
So like we were doing like heavy duty work all the time. And so that's where I got really tired, because like I was still making the same amount of money. And so because of that, that's where I wanted to get a change going. And so that's why I started looking. And I just happened to find something on Indeed to be a technician, and it already paid like double what zookeeping was. And that was at my starting position.
Hmm.
And then I just got 2 raises as I've been here.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things that I'm sort of taking away from the career conversation that we're having right now is like knowing your worth and not settling. That like
Yeah.
if you feel like you're being mistreated at your job, like look around for other things because there are other things out there. I think that a lot of people will sort of like relegate themselves to hopelessness, that like, oh, like there's nothing better out there, this is like all that I can get, this is the way that the world is. And so
Mhm.
then like they'll just stay at a job that they're super unhappy with. And it sounds like you have always been somebody that is like, no, like I'm not happy with this, I'm going to look for something better.
Yeah, and I get that it's not that easy for everybody. I feel I don't want to say lucky, because like it's not just luck, but there is a luck aspect to it. Like when you look on Indeed and when employers actually put applications and whether your application actually gets picked
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. But I think a lot of people don't put in enough time to try to look for new things. I know change is hard for a lot of people.
Mm.
I mean, I hate interviews. I still feel so bad around them. I think I might be a little bit better just because I do a lot more like meetings like this and stuff,
Yeah.
with you and with like other vendors at work and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I know it's very scary to put out your application, especially if you have something like imposter syndrome. Like your application doesn't feel like it, like you can't be proud of it or something like that.
Sure.
Um, but I think if you really are unhappy with where you're at, or you really do need a job, like no, you shouldn't settle for like a low paying job just to have a job, but it's something that will help.
Sure.
It's experience. It'll help you financially at least a little bit if you're struggling, um, and you'll start to get that little bit of experience that might actually help you with the next one. So I feel like people should just give those a chance. And
Mm.
if you are in a job that you don't like, just start looking. Like even if you can't find something right now, you should at least start looking.
Yeah, just always sort of have your eyes open, like have
Yeah.
sort of have your feelers out.
Yeah, like when I started looking for a job, like when I first turned like 18, I think I put out 30 job applications in like a week
Wow.
before one finally called me back.
Wow.
Oh, I forgot like my other favorite job, like modeling. Like that's a cool other job to have. I forgot about that one.
Totally. Do
But
you
yeah,
want
I put out 30 applications before I finally heard back from one of them.
Wow.
So it's like it's gonna take time. It doesn't mean that you don't have a good application or you're not gonna be a good fit. Sometimes like it's just the system, especially like online now, like they just filter out applications left and right. So
Yeah,
don't let that deter you.
it's just a numbers game, and you gotta just like submit as many as possible so that you get that one call back.
Yeah.
It's like batting averages. Um,
Yeah.
what one thing that I was sort of curious to clarify is, uh, you know, on the one hand, it seems like you have a pretty solid idea of your value. Like it seems like, I'm not going to settle for sort of like being treated in a way that, or like working in a way that I'm not satisfied with.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, I also hear you talk about how like you feel like an imposter. You have like a little bit of imposter syndrome. Can you help me understand how those two sort of like coexist? Like how does that work?
Hmm. Uh, how, can you ask the question again?
Yeah. Let me see if I can ask it in a different way. So it seems conflictual to me, this idea of like, hey, like I know my worth, I know my value, and
Mhm,
simultaneously I feel like an imposter. Those
mhm.
seem contradictory to me. And I'm trying
They are.
to understand because it seems like both sort of live in you at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to understand a little bit better how those two live in you at the same time. Like how do you know your worth and also feel like an imposter?
Okay. I think the first thing I would say is sometimes it's a day-to-day kind of thing.
Okay.
Like just like how some people feel more confidence in their body in some days versus other days, I think.
Sure.
Or art skill or something, just any type of uh thing about yourself. You have a good and bad day. So I think that's partially it. And then I think the other thing is like the confidence in myself and knowing my worth is something I apply for a future thing, like when I'm job searching or something like that. Whereas the imposter syndrome is like, okay, I got this promotion, or I got offered, even just offered this promotion. Like when I first hit, when my boss first told me he wanted to promote me to lab manager, and it's almost like reality setting in, like, oh shit, I have all these new responsibilities, why did he give this to me? It's
Hmm.
kind of like like one's like the dream and one's like when you wake up from the dream and you realize, oh crap, I have to do all this. That's what I would say.
That's really interesting. Okay, so
Yeah.
let me see if I sort of understand it correctly. So
Okay.
what I think I heard you say is that like the knowing your worth for you is sort of like an overall thing. Like,
Mhm.
when you think about like your life as a whole and sort of like look at your life from almost like a third party perspective, you're
Mhm.
like, yeah, I have a certain amount of value that I provide. I have a certain amount of like, I think that I should be treated a particular way. I should get paid a certain amount, etc.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the actual day to day, the sort of like minutia of life, there's
Mhm.
a lot more like insecurity and doubt that comes up. That like, yeah, when you're looking at it from a third party perspective, you can be like, yeah, I deserve a certain blah blah blah. But then like
Mhm.
when you actually go into it, it's like, okay, this is a little scarier than it seemed when I was looking at it from a distance.
Yes,
Okay.
I would agree with that. And I thought of something else that I think you'll find really fascinating.
Okay.
Okay, so I partook in a particular drug one time. I
Okay.
don't want to say what it was.
Okay.
I might have told you this. And while I was under the influence, there was at one point where I was feeling really overwhelmed by everything physically and emotionally and whatnot. I was like having a breakdown and then having a laughing fit and breakdown, laughing fit like every like 15 seconds. It was awful. But when I finally like started calming down a little bit, I remember to help myself calm down, I was like laying in a gaming chair with like a blanket pulled up to here, and I was just watching Bob Ross like on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
Just something calm, something easy to watch, something where like I could just focus and like listen to like the soothing sounds of Bob Ross. And I had these two trains of thought at the exact same time. Did I tell you this?
I have no idea, but keep going.
Okay. So I was having these two trains of thought at the exact same time while I was under the influence. And one train of thought while watching Bob Ross was that I am a terrible artist. I will never be as good as Bob Ross. He is so much better. There's all these amazing artists out there, blah, 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 everything negative about myself.
Hmm.
And at the same time, I was having another train of thought was like, no, Alyssa, you're really good at making art. Other people wish they could make stuff as good as you. You're on your own journey. You're still experimenting. You're still like gaining your skill and learning how to make all this different kinds of art. Like you're on your own journey. Like you don't have to worry about like comparing yourself to other artists. And that like describes what you're saying perfectly. Like there's the imposter and then there's no, you're worthy. And so it's just really funny that like that happened at the exact same time.
Totally.
But only while I was under the influence. But I do a lot of back and forth in my head with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it helped me feel better having that conversation with myself.
Yeah, that it's really interesting because I think that you're describing a phenomenon that is really, really common. I think I think that every single human being on Earth has sort of like fractured parts of themselves, that they have like sort of different parts of themselves that are different voices in their head that sort of will like argue with each other or fight with each other in some way. And it sounds like on that day, for whatever reason, a little bit of resolution was able to be found between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
That like normally I feel like when those two sides fight, they just sort of like ramp up the energy of each other and the fight just gets like bigger and badder. But for whatever reason, it sounds like on that day when those two had that conversation, they found some kind of like peace or common ground with one another. And it's not like totally resolved. They still fight with each other, but like they got a little closer that day.
Yeah.
Huh. How'd that happen? What do you think happened there?
The drug that I took.
Okay. Okay.
I think that was definitely a cause.
For sure.
But yeah, I have those kinds of feelings, not to that extent or like that like clear to see. Like when it happened that day, but I do get like that every once in a while.
Get like what?
Like when get like that same kind of conversation going on in my head. Like, and I think it goes back to like there's the worth for the future and the imposter for the present. Say like, you know, working on art, like I've been working on some cards for some friends, and like I'll like work on art, and like, you know, if I keep making mistakes, I'm gonna like start beating myself up a little bit. Or if I see other people's art like online, I'm just like, oh, I wish I could do that. But then like I think back to like where like the not the history, but like where I started out and like where I've gotten. And then I think about how I love to learn anyways. And so like I just have to put in that time a little bit more, and then I can improve even better, even more. And then I end up like not feeling so bad about where I'm at in my skill.
Yeah. That you're able to sort of like, instead of comparing yourself to others, it sounds like you take a moment to sort of like step back and compare yourself to yourself. And when you do that, you actually find a lot of pride in your work. You're like, wow.
Yeah.
Compared to where I started, I'm actually doing really great.
Yeah, and I think that it's important that other people do the same thing, because I think so often we're always trying to compare ourselves to each other. And yes, there's always going to be, not always, but there will often be people that are better than you in
There
a
will
certain
always
skill.
be people that are
There
better
will
than
always
you. There's
depends
always
on
a
the
bigger
skill. You
fish.
could become the grand master of something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Um,
I guess technically there has to be somebody that is the best at something.
yeah, it just depends what people consider the best. Like
Yeah.
what is the criteria, you know?
Hmm.
But yeah, there's always going to be often going to be someone better than you at something, but it doesn't mean that you haven't improved from where you were 10, 15, 20 years ago, whatever. And so
Yeah.
I think that it's important to just kind of think more internally about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like when people are like, "Oh, I can't even draw a stick figure." It's like I couldn't draw a stick figure before too. I was a baby at some point.
Yeah.
You know, I was barely learning how to hold a pencil in my hand. I just decided to work on that,
Yeah.
and you can do the same thing. That's why, like, I have two mottos of my life. One, arachnophobia can be cured, or fear of something can be cured. It's because it's irrational, which means fear is taught. Oh, that's what it is. Fear is taught, which means it can be unlearned.
Mm.
Like if, and I've seen it plentifully in like spider groups and bug groups where people are like, I used to be so scared, and just from being here and learning about bugs and spiders and, you know, learning how to identify them and that they're not all going to kill me, like I'm not scared of them anymore. I just picked one up the other day. Like there's like your example right there.
Mm.
So that's my first motto. My second motto is that anyone can learn how to create something.
Mm.
You just have to put in the time. We're not lucky, we're not blessed with a gift. We've learned how to hone in on that gift or on that skill.
Mm.
And so, like, I don't remember why I was going on this. Oh, like, yeah, you just got to look at like where you yourself are and where you were. And if you want to make changes, then start making them.
Yeah. I think that one of
Sorry,
my
I'm getting passionate.
I love it. I love it. I think that one of my favorite things about these conversations is hearing the things that like I have sort of learned as like overarching principles in life, like, you know, comparison leads to suffering, and hearing those come out of people naturally from experience, like observed across people, like, you know, when I talk to clients in my work, like this is a very common theme. Comparison is a very common theme, and it's just really cool hearing the difference between like some Instagram guru being like, you just gotta not compare yourself to people, man.
Just look
And
inward, man.
just look inward, man. And like actually hearing somebody that has the experience of it, of like, wow, like it is so different hearing some Instagram guru say that versus hearing somebody say like, hey, like I've gone through my life and like, you know, suffered with this and found some amount of peace by doing this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sort of like hearing that experience is so, yeah, it's just it turns something from like being trite into being like impactful and valuable. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
I agree. Definitely.
Okay. So we've been talking for about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
We have plenty more to talk about, but I feel like we have come to sort of like the end of like this section of the conversation in terms of like
Yeah.
career. Would you prefer to wrap up or would you prefer to keep going?
I wouldn't mind going, but I actually had a suggestion for stream related stuff.
Shoot.
Um, I know you said at the beginning, but I personally wouldn't mind addressing things in chat.
Sure.
I don't know if you want to include chat so that your YouTube video can show what people are talking about, but I feel like, you know, we're talking about a lot of like real life situations, not just me and like my experiences, but
Yeah.
you know, other people's experiences as well. And I feel like it would be of value to see what people are saying and
Yeah.
address some of those things.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion, and I don't want it to be like just about me, but I would love to see what other people are thinking.
Totally. That
So,
sounds great. Do you want to I literally have had chat covered so that I don't look at it
oh no, I've been
because
looking at it a little
good,
bit.
good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I didn't want to I wanted to sort of like be honed in on you and didn't want to sort of like get distracted. Um
Oh.
so uh if any if anyone has any like particular questions or any things that they would like to share. Pyro, if there was anything that you saw that you particularly wanted to like highlight or talk about, I am totally down for that.
Well, I see Ari's message about what they think of me as a teacher and how good I am in explaining things, and it kind of now that I've talked about the whole like fear of spiders and everything, I know Ari is one person that suffers from that a little bit,
Mm.
but I also know that he, being in my Discord, he has improved a little bit on that. Can you stop, please? He's improved a little bit when it comes to like talking about spiders. Like he actually like asks me like not necessarily to identify, because like we don't like pictures in here in the Discord sometimes, but just like about like physiological aspects and things like that. And so it kind of goes back, like fear can be untaught. You just have to take the time and want to unlearn it. I think a lot of people don't want to face that discomfort, and so I'm glad that I can be there to help Ari with that. So
Yeah,
yeah, just kind of goes back to what I was saying.
totally. I think that
Hi, Ivy.
the the idea of like how do I say this?
Oh, hi, Strawberry. Love you too.
I think that what it reminds me of is sort of like the way that people tend to sort of like hop on bandwagons, you know, that like
Mm,
we're very quick to like come to conclusions and judgments in like society today.
mhm.
And when you take the time to really sort of like delve deep and sort of like learn more about something, everything seems to sort of like gravitate toward the middle. Like
Yeah.
nothing seems to be like quite as like horrible or reprehensible as it seems upon first glance, and like
Mhm.
everything seems to sort of land somewhere in the middle. And it seems like in you sort of like teaching, you know, people like Ari about like what is actually going on with spiders, like what spiders are actually like,
Yeah.
it helps to sort of like open them up to that. And I
Yeah,
think,
I think there's when it comes to spiders specifically, there's a lot of fear mongering because a lot of people aren't willing to take that time to understand them, because it's so easy to just be like, ew, I don't like it, kill it.
mhm,
Versus, let me learn about why this spider isn't that thing that I should be afraid of. And yes, I've been taught all my life, and my parents and my this goes for any kind of thing, but like my parents and my grandparents taught me this thing. Why would I stray from that? I think makes people very, very uncomfortable.
yeah,
And I want to try and kind of change gears a little bit. Um, Being friends with my trainer, uh, Andrew, who mostly in a political view, but kind of just all around, tends to be someone very different than a lot of the other people I hang out with,
mhm,
who tends to gravitate more towards that middle or even that other side
yeah,
when it comes to politics and social issues and things like that. So it does make me uncomfortable sometimes being his friend and having certain conversations, because they're things that I've never heard of before
mhm,
and never took the time to learn and hear about. Same with spiders. So it's like it's a very uncomfortable feeling, but I feel like it's opened up my mind a whole bunch.
mhm, yeah,
So it's a very different kind of it's weird to be like to want to be uncomfortable, but I think we spend a lot of our lives, everyone has told me this now, like we spend our lives in an echo chamber around people that we know have the same views as us.
mhm,
So we become very comfortable,
yeah.
and I think it's dangerous.
And the internet is
So
only making that worse because like the internet is run by algorithms. So like you watch a YouTube video about a particular topic that you sort of already agree with, and then
mhm,
next time YouTube recommends something that's like a little bit further down that rabbit hole, a little bit further down that rabbit hole, and like
mhm,
before you know it, you're like, you know, radicalized and not accounting for like any other sort of like thoughts or opinions. And so this
yeah,
idea of sort of like surrounding yourself with like other contrary opinions is it seems really valuable. And I think that what's cool about the particular example that you used is that I remember knowing you a few years ago where you would talk about sort of like people of like other political leanings, you were like, I don't even want to like
Yeah.
associate with those
And I think a
people.
lot of people are like that in our friend circle. And it's okay to like have your passions and like the kind of people you want to hang out with. I just think it's important that especially with how close we are now, like it doesn't have to define you as a person.
Hmm.
Like, yes, if you're like a Nazi or whatever, I don't want to be friends with you. But if your political standpoints are just that a little bit different or not as strongly leaning towards one side, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. You just don't have those same views. And like, why should that mean that you're not a friend? Like, my grandparents are conservative. It doesn't mean I'm not going to love my grandparents. It just means we're a little iffy about the conversations at the dinner table sometimes. But it doesn't mean I don't love them any less.
Right.
And I think that it can go for friends as well. Like, you can still have friends that you don't agree with on everything.
Yeah.
And you can help to educate each other if they're willing to be open and you're willing to be open about it.
Yeah. And just sort of speaking for myself, like I said, um, because this is a little bit of a different format, I feel a little bit more comfortable like talking about myself.
That's fine.
I think that I really struggle with friendships in general, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that one of the things that strangely makes me feel more secure in a friendship is
Mm-hmm.
when friends are willing to express their differences and opinions, because
Absolutely.
like when people are too worried about offending me and are like just being nice to me all the time, it's very hard for me to determine where I stand in the relationship. And so
Mm-hmm.
like I'm constantly worried that like, oh, like what if this person actually doesn't like me and is just being nice? Versus like if somebody is willing to actually say like, hey, I actually feel like I need space right now, or like, hey, I actually don't feel like I can give that, whatever. That actually makes me feel like, oh, okay, like now I know that when they say yes to something, or when they say, yeah, like I'm really into this, or yeah, I'm really enjoying this, that like that is true and authentic, and I don't have to worry about them like lying to me in order to be
Mm.
nice to save my feelings, whatever. And I think that that's really valuable, because I think that a lot of people are so worried about conflict that like the analogy that comes to mind is like in a relationship where people will
Mm.
stay together for years, decades, in order to like because they don't want to hurt the other person, but in the
Mm-hmm.
process end up hurting each other way more than if they had just sort of like addressed it and like nipped it in the bud in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of goes back also, not just even from like viewpoints in general, but just like communication in a relationship
Yeah.
and being able to say like you said this one thing and I just wanted to express my opinion because I might have sounded like I agree with you, but actually this is like I was just supporting you because we were around friends, but honestly like this is how I feel. And I think that that can make a relationship so much stronger when like they're not afraid to like it's okay to be supportive, but it's okay to be honest at the same time
Yeah.
and let people know like I think you were actually like misinformed about this one thing and here's something to back it up.
Yeah.
I think too often people are just afraid of conflict, um, even if it doesn't result in a fight, even if it's just like a discussion. Like I just had like it's not a fight like that we've had, like we're not even like in like a full-blown relationship, but like we've had these like tough conversations where like we disagree on something and my default is to shut down and not talk about it because I don't know how to have a conversation in regards to something I don't agree with. And like he's the kind of person to be like, no, we need to talk about this. And in the end, like it's resolved itself and we're back to being fine and happy. It's not like we go to bed angry or anything like that. And that's something I'm definitely not used to. And I really appreciate that that's a quality that we have.
Yeah. And so as somebody that it sounds like has that sort of like natural fear of like conflict or disagreement, can you talk to me a little bit about sort of like what you are worried about happening if you engage in that conflict?
I think a lot of it is how my brain works. I think we've talked about it before where it's really hard for me to like pinpoint the feelings that I'm having and like put them into words
Hmm.
before like the next feeling comes into play. And so when someone's saying something to me and they're asking like what I think about this or what's wrong or what's on your mind, it's really hard for me to actually like put that out into the world. And so I get very flustered. Okay, hold on. It was Tiny and the other cat. Crap, I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about how it's very hard for you to express yourself during those conversations.
Yeah, so in turn, I tend to get very flustered and frustrated in myself, and I think that comes out with me yelling, like getting really upset, and not like being partially upset at the other person for like having this situation happen between the two of us, but then I'm also just upset with myself because I can't get those words out. And so I think to have the other person be equally as bad at that makes it really hard, because then instead of talking about the issue, we're left thinking what the other person is thinking, and then nothing gets resolved. And it's been like that. Like I always talk about like past, I don't always talk about it, but when I think about past relationships I've had, a lot of it, the downfalls are due to lack of communication. And just things kind of just issues like stirring up but never getting addressed until they all get addressed at once and the relationship comes tumbling down.
For sure.
That happens too often.
Yeah, there's just like too big of a pile to handle at that point, because it was building up and building up and building up, and then all of a sudden it's this like mountain that you're looking at and you're like, no idea how to deal with this.
Yeah. Kind of just going back to chat. Yeah, I hate that people feel like they can't talk about this kind of stuff with their friends and family.
Yeah.
I wish it was better.
Yeah.
Easier.
I think that one of the biggest problems in all kinds of relationships, romantic or otherwise, is that like it is communication. That people like don't know how to talk to each other, and therefore, like you said, like sort of mountains pile up until eventually it just feels kind of insurmountable.
Yeah, and I feel very grateful that I have friends that I can talk honestly to.
Daw.
My family, I can do the same thing. You say daw?
Yeah, daw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd say, if you have friends that are open to that kind of, if you have friends or family that you can be open with, start practicing. Like you can practice communication now, effective communication now. And it's okay if it's a journey for you and the person you're working with. Like it doesn't have to, like you being bad at communication does not have to be a defining feature of yourself for the rest of your life. You can work on it. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm not great at it yet, but I am getting better.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to work on.
To practice communication. And then I think also sort of like purposefully surrounding yourself with people that value communication. Because, earlier we were talking about sort of like not surrounding yourself like in an echo chamber. And I think that having people that think differently than you is very important. But I think that regardless of if they think differently or the same from you, surrounding yourself with people that like value communication and are working to like communicate better with the people around them, I think is really important. Because
definitely,
if you're constantly surrounding yourself with people that, like let's say you grew up in a household that just like doesn't talk to each other, it actually makes it a whole lot more likely that you're going to surround yourself with people like that when you're older, because it's what you're used to. And so like breaking that mold and finding people that are comfortable having tough conversations, even though it's super uncomfortable for you. I think that this idea of sort of, and you even brought this up earlier, Pyro, this idea of like leaning into discomfort is is one way in which you can sort of like, I don't know, construct a life where you feel a bit happier and a bit more free.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. I wanted to say something extra, not something extra, but there is now that I've kind of like moved away from this original view that I have, like where I'm stuck in this echo chamber and all on one side, and I'm kind of shifting my way towards the middle, it's been really interesting to see how these old communities that I'm in uh, are still part of that
Mm.
chamber, and how see I see it as something that I don't really want to be a part of in the same way.
Mhm.
I don't want to say whose community it's in, but I'm in a Discord community where all they have is support, support, support for each other.
Mm.
And at first, I was like, oh, there's such a welcoming, comfortable, safe environment. I love that for everyone. And now it's just like I get that it's okay to be comfortable and in a safe place where you can vent and know that you get support. But then I feel like you also don't get those people that will be honest with you and say, you know what, here's actually what I think you need to do about this. Like, yes, it's okay that you're feeling bad, but you need to work on yourself a little bit or something like that. I think
Mhm.
people are, like you were talking about, afraid of hurting somebody or saying something that's going to make that person uncomfortable. And so there's none of that discussion happening. And like, because I'm seeing that now, it makes me want to have a community where I can't have that safe, comfortable space, but I still want to have people be honest with everyone. And I think a lot of people aren't ready for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't want to hurt each other.
There are too many thoughts in my head from what you just said. I have to choose which one I want to say. Hold on. Yeah, I think that on the other side of what I was saying about sort of like not knowing where I stand with friends, there is also the problem that comes from what it seems like you were talking about, which is that like if you surround yourself with people that just support, 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 and never sort of like hold you accountable to a certain extent, I think that
Yes.
you can end up like developing some really bad habits or behaviors because no one is ever calling you out. Everyone is just like, that's okay, it's okay. And sometimes like people mess up. Like sometimes people are assholes and like need to be called out on it.
Yeah.
And so I think that having people around you that are willing to be like, actually, you're being a little bit of an asshole right now. I love
Yeah.
you, but you're being a little bit of an asshole.
Yeah.
Uh, Helps out a lot.
Yeah. My mom says it becomes negative support. I never really thought of it like that, but I think that's definitely true.
Yeah, where the support there's like an analogy on the tip of my tongue. Hold on. Oh, I know what it's like. It's sort of like if you it becomes a crutch. If you like
Yeah.
always if you always use something to help you walk, eventually like your legs are gonna atrophy and you won't be able to walk for yourself.
That's a really good analogy.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah, I
thanks.
like that.
And so, yeah, having people that are like, okay, like, you know, I'm here to support you, but like, you need to walk yourself. Uh,
Like it's gonna be uncomfortable.
yeah,
Like your legs are going to hurt. Like my mom, I'm gonna back side story real quick.
do
My
it.
mom had her she had a surgery where she got like a callus taken off on her heel. Not a callus, it was a bone spur
Mm.
on her heel, and she was like on the couch for like 3 weeks, and then she was like using a scooter for like 3 weeks, and her doctor said you need to start walking on your heel, it's going to be uncomfortable. And she just like was too scared to do it because she didn't want that pain, and so she would just like use the scooter and use the wheel. And it turned out like after enough time her muscles did start to atrophy, and she showed me like her two legs and just how different they both looked because one was being used and the other one wasn't. And
Wow.
it's like you gotta be uncomfortable in order to get back to normal and be healthy again.
That's
So
scary.
that's a really good analogy.
She recover her leg?
Yes, she's doing better.
Okay, good. That's
Yeah.
scary.
But
Wow.
yeah, same with like your mom when she had her surgery. It was a totally different situation actually. With her hip, they like made her walk upstairs like 2 days in,
Mm.
and like they like had someone come over to do PT with her, and so like they were forcing her to move up and move around. And yeah, she was very uncomfortable. I feel so bad for your mom, but in the end, she ended up healing a bit faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And being like she did New York and walked however many thousands of steps, when in very little pain. So I think it depends on that community and those people you surround yourself with to hold you accountable, push you through the discomfort so that it ends up being good for you in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I was thinking about how it's amazing how quickly our bodies and muscles will sort of like atrophy if we don't use them. And
Mm.
that got me thinking about like, uh, I wonder if the mind atrophies faster or slower than the body. That like if you are not, if you are not being challenged, if you are not sort of like using your mind in that way,
Mm.
if it is just like any other muscle where it atrophies sort of like at the same rate, or if it goes even faster, or if it's a little bit slower, like I don't think that it is actually necessarily relevant. It's just like
Yeah.
a curious quandary that popped into my head.
Well, my opinion would be when we're talking about the mind and we're talking about getting all this support from people without being told the hard stuff, the uncomfortable stuff, is you can get it tenfold. You can get 10 people to tell you it's okay. Whereas, where am I going with this? I just feel like the level of negative support you could be getting is so much more than just, okay, I'm going to step my foot on the ground and deal with this pain for 30 seconds and then
Mm,
I can lift my foot up and then start walking a little bit and then just take a break. And I feel like we're so accustomed to getting that support so quickly and with easy access, especially with the internet around and discords and Twitch communities that are all uh, sharing that their support is a safe space and or their community is a safe space, that it's just very easy to slip into that comfort.
yeah, yeah. It is it is so much like easier and more accessible to, like it's not often that you have a bone spur in your foot and have to learn how to rewalk, but it's
Right.
super often that like echo chambers are available to us and like we have the opportunity to fall down them.
Yeah, and I feel like kind of keeping the comparison going, like, yeah, bone spurs aren't going to happen, but like we don't talk about, oh, I cut my finger today, oh, I have a little bit of a headache. But if it's like, oh, I just had a crappy day at work, oh, this customer said something to me today, or oh, I keep getting like just like all these like emotional things happening or day-to-day things happening, that I think it just becomes uh intuitive to I don't want to say complain, because like it's okay that you want support, but like it like people can just say whatever they want as venting
Mm.
and know that there's going to be someone that's like, it's okay. Pain is easy to fix.
Mm.
Physical pain,
Yeah.
you can take medicine, you can do some stretching, you can get an ice pack, and people know how to deal with that. People don't know how to deal with difficult situations in the workplace or with customers or with family members, because you're dealing with a second person now. How are they going to act if you're trying to like stand up for yourself? Or
Yeah.
you might get met with backlash and stuff like that, or reprimanding at work. So it's like people are more scared, I think, to do something about it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting uh like fine line in my head, because as you talk about this idea of like, well, people won't talk about like, oh, like I got a little cut or something, but they will
Mm.
talk about like, oh, like I had a tough day at work or whatever. It's interesting to because then on the flip side of that coin, I also feel like, we have all sorts of physical help solutions in terms of like, you can go see a doctor, you can go see a physical trainer, or like a physical therapist, you can go see a fitness trainer. Like there's all of these like physical solutions for us, and like
Mm-hmm.
the physical body is there's so much more sort of like knowledge and attention paid to the physical body. But then when it comes to sort of like mental health stuff, it's like go see a therapist. Like that's like the only option. Even what I do, even though it's like different than therapy, it often just sort of gets lumped in with therapy. Like, well, like it's basically therapy. Um, and so it's just interesting to think about like what is the line between uh just like venting and sort of like getting things, just sort of like dumping,
Mm,
and actually like getting help to make sure that, you know, like your metaphorical leg doesn't atrophy.
mhm.
What do you think? What is the line between like just dumping and venting versus like actually getting help with the stuff that you're struggling with mentally?
I think enough people rely on these venting communities or discords or whatever to just like what my mom was saying, you'll always find someone to validate your views.
Mm,
Um, but I think that they're not taking the time to like look inward, man, and think about like, is this something that I can actually like take care of?
mm,
Like they just want they want the vent and they want the support, but they don't want the fix.
mm,
And I think people who really like start looking to get the fix will actually start looking for like therapy or a doctor. Like, hey, like my leg's been hurting and I've tried stretching, I've tried pain medication, and nothing seems to working. And this is something more serious that I need to address. That I think that people just, it's hard to do that. It's hard to like, especially when it comes to like therapy, it's hard for people to reach out. Like me personally, like, you know, I'm still trying to look for it there. Well, I haven't been looking for a while, but I need to.
mm-hmm.
But like the thought of having to do all of that and you know, be vulnerable with someone that I don't know just to realize they're not a good fit for me, you know, that's a really scary thought. And I think a lot of people are scared to do that. And then some people might not have that accessibility to healthcare like that. And so the thought of like adulting in that way, I think is just very scary for them.
Yeah, how are you feeling right now?
I feel great.
Okay. Okay.
What? What?
It seemed like as you were talking about it that like there was just like a breath that came up for you that seemed, I don't know, like stressed or something.
No, no, I'm good.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Um yeah, yeah, that it is there were a couple of things that I heard. The first was like introspection, that like it people almost use venting as a way to avoid looking inside. That like they're
Yes.
like, well, if I just dump my problem somewhere else, then I don't have to think about this stuff.
I don't have to address it myself.
Right. And
Yeah, I can
so
get that validation.
yeah, and so like the idea of like prioritizing introspection, and then the other thing that I heard is that it is really scary looking for help in this world right now, because opening up to somebody that you don't know if they'll actually be able to help you or not is really scary.
Hmm.
What makes because we've established that it's really easy to like open up to people that, you know, just like, you know, randos on the internet that make us feel validated.
Hmm.
What makes it harder to open up to a professional about it?
I think based off the little therapy experience that I've actually had, the fact that, you know, they're there to support you, but they're not going to necessarily validate everything you're saying,
Hmm.
and that they're going to get you to see things in a different view. Kind of like, you know, we're going to pull you out of that echo chamber for a little bit and be told that, like, you're actually, they're not going to say you're in the wrong, but I mean, maybe they will. Maybe they'll be like, you know what, I actually think that this is what's going on, and get you to see these things that you haven't seen before because all you've been told is that it's okay, you'll be fine, we're here for you. And they're actually going to say, we're going to work on this, and here's the work that you need to put in. And I think people are afraid of putting in that work also.
Yeah, that they're actually going to like challenge you.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Not in like a competitive way or anything like that, but they will challenge those that validation that you've been getting all this time. And I think that makes people really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Mamoff said, Rando, you can dump and run, no accountability in the end. Professional, you're going to them knowing you have to do something, and effort is hard, especially when it's on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, interestingly enough, Mamoff sort of echoed what you said for me. That like
Yeah.
that is essentially it. And so like Pyro, as somebody who, in my view of things, like does work so hard and is so willing to sort of like put yourself in uncomfortable situations, what is it that like makes that particular thing, being therapy, what is it that makes that particular thing really sort of like difficult or scary to seek out?
Therapy for me, why is it so difficult to seek out?
Yeah.
Making an appointment stresses me out. Making like doctor's appointments really stresses me out. I know a lot of people could agree with that.
Mm.
Um, making sure they're a good fit. I've only been to two therapists in my life. One, I only went to like less than 5 times, I think, before she had like went on like maternity leave, and I was like, great, well, there goes, like, I gave you all this information and we didn't really work on it yet, and now you're leaving. So that was one really bad thing.
Mm.
And then the next therapist I went to, she was like a lot older and a lot more traditional, and like I'm in my first session talking about like this like um, bit of a trigger warning, but like suicide ideation.
Mm.
um and just, just how like sometimes I think about like jumping off bridges or whatever, but like, people talk about that kind of stuff in a very like casual way, like it's ideation, it's not or ideally, what is the difference?
So
Versus intent, right?
yes.
Okay, so just talk about ideation, people do it in a very casual, not serious way, so like I said it very like casually and like almost like with a smile. And she was like, you should not be laughing about this. This is no joking manner. And like just totally criticized the one time I'm like talking about like how I'm like the really like terrible thing I'm talking about, and just made me feel so bad about it. And so like I never went back to her. And that was the last time I went to therapy. That was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then just, yeah, just the act of finding one and then having to be like, here's what I'm going through. Here's all this stuff. Can you help me?
Mm.
And then for them to say, this doesn't seem like my field for you, like my field of expertise to
Yeah.
help you with.
Yeah.
And to do it all over again is very like intimidating.
Totally. Yeah. There is so much of what you talked about that I think that is super super common and normal. Like one being this idea that uh, the sort of like dating around process that you have to
Mm-hmm.
do when you're looking for some kind of mental health help is just like exhausting. And then two, that just to sort of like explain a little bit about what Pyro was talking about in terms of suicidal ideation versus intent. There's like two types of suicidality. Suicidal ideation is first of all like very very common. I think that especially today you'd be kind of hard pressed to find people that haven't had suicidal ideation at some point in their life. But it's basically the idea of like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I like didn't wake up in the morning? Because life is so hard that like it would just kind of be a relief if I like didn't wake up in the morning. And the thing about that is that, again, one, it's very normal. And two, because suicide is so stigmatized, when people talk about it, they often get reactions like what you got, Pyro, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you know,
This is no joking
this is no
matter.
joking
This is
matter.
very
This is such a big
serious.
deal. People like freak out about it. And that makes people feel just like you felt, Pyro, that like it's not okay to talk about. And
Mm-hmm.
the really, really fucked up thing about that is that that actually makes suicidal ideation worse, because
Mm-hmm.
if you can't talk about it, you can't share it, it makes it sort of like grow in strength. And then there's suicidal intent, which is like, I have a plan and I'm going to kill myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that one is a little bit scarier. Like that one, I think warrants freaking out a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas when you freak out about somebody expressing suicidal ideation, it actually, like you described, Pyro, sort of ends up making the person feel invalidated, because like all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden they're like, oh, okay, like I guess that I shouldn't talk about this. I guess that I'm sort of like alone in this. And then because of that, that only makes the feeling worse. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. And I haven't looked since. Well, actually, I did look, and they were gonna call me back to schedule an appointment, and then they never did. So I'm like, all right, I guess I shouldn't go to that place because clearly my time is not valuable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Ivy had a very similar situation. Yeah, it was pretty crazy that it came from a therapist, but I think kind of going back to her being a lot older, she was like mid 60s or late 50s or something like that. So she had those traditional views, and I imagine those two different versions of suicidality were not really ever separated for
Mm,
her back then.
mm,
It's probably a very new thing, so I think she didn't know how to handle it
mhm.
like a more modern therapist.
Hopefully, I mean, one would hope.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I have also heard a lot of stories of like younger modern therapists also freaking out and making people feel invalidated.
yeah.
But I think that what you brought up in terms of you know, somebody saying, "Oh, like we'll get back to you," and then never getting back to you, or even like I hear lots of stories of people trying to make an appointment and the appointment isn't for like a month or two.
Mm-hmm.
That this is this in I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a second. This is the problem with like mental health being relegated to just therapists. Therapists have like a
Mm.
monopoly on mental health right now. And the problem with that is that they can't handle the demand. That like
Mm.
everyone is really suffering right now. And so they can't help everyone. There's just not enough of them. And so like as we try to sort of like make more spaces where actual mental health conversation can happen, I think that the hope is that that is going to sort of like lift some of the burden off of therapists and like
Mm.
allow people to get more support in other areas. Just like, like when you have something going on physically, you don't always necessarily go to a doctor. There are like
Right.
different options of like what kind of things you can do or where you can go to get help with something that's going on physically. But that and it's just starting to happen, but that has not happened a whole lot with mental health as of yet.
Unfortunately, because I think that not that it's more important than physical health, but I think especially now with COVID and with people kind of starting to open up about how they're feeling, like men being more honest about their emotions. I think that, it's especially crucial right now.
Yeah, I think that in terms of it not being more important than physical health, I think to to bring up a very controversial topic, I
I
think
think
it's
it is.
kind of similar to the idea of like Black Lives Matter. That people are like, well, all lives matter, and you're like, well, yes, but right now it seems like
Mm,
the problem is that like mental health is not being prioritized.
yeah.
And so
Physical health we have solutions for, and it is getting addressed. Mental health is not getting addressed to the same extent.
right, exactly. Something for the QA section, maybe, but how do you deal with someone talking about the idealization side of it from someone who has attempted in the past? The
Mm,
idealization side of suicide, is that what you're talking about, Mamov? Ira, let me know if you
yeah.
understand that question better.
Yeah, I think he's saying that someone who has attempted in the past and is still with us is now talking about ideation. And like I th- I think he's saying like is it normal to be just as worried because they have tried to do something in the past?
Oh, that like if they, I thought that he was talking about somebody like idealizing suicide, as in like making it seem like an amazing, wonderful option. If he's talking about ideation being scarier because someone has attempted it in the past, is that what you're talking about, Mamoff? The fact that some mental health issues can cause physical issues. It is amazing to me, Ivy. I didn't realize quite how common it was until I started really working in this field. But it is amazing to me the way that how common it is that for people that don't know how to sort of like emotionally process stuff, those emotions have to go somewhere. And so it is so incredibly common for it to like go into the body. Um,
And it's very
and
common like stress will lower your immune system.
yeah,
So stressed people get sick more often.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
wild. It
Well,
is really
and
wild the way
kind
that
of
it affects.
with the reverse of that, I've talked to Tech about this, and I talked to my mom and my sister about it too. Ever since I started working out more frequently,
Mm-hmm.
like 3 to 4 times a week, I've not really had any bad mental health days.
Mm,
Maybe one here or there, and I kind of attribute it to PMS.
mm,
But the rest of the time, like I feel great, like happy, like and the fact that I'm taking more time to actually relax on the weekends and not taking on like all these extra like projects and stuff like art and everything, art or stream. I have not had like bad days lately, not
mm.
even like anxiety days as frequent, unless it's related to work. Then I'm still anxious. But that's been a really interesting observation I've had.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah,
yeah. And it seems like work is because you are sort of still in a transition period where like
yeah.
you're still getting used to the new job, and so that is just kind of stressful and scary every day that you go in.
Which is why I take more time when I'm not working to relax,
Yeah, makes a
not
lot of
take on those
sense.
projects.
Um,
Yeah, it's been nice.
uh, Yeah, I think that what is so it's such a catch 22 because I think that you're absolutely right that like exercise and diet will help tremendously in
Mm,
people's sort of mental health journey. But the problem is, and I've talked about this before, but the one of the things that I often say about like depression is that depression is sort of like an autoimmune disease of the mind in that
mm-hmm.
it sort of like attacks our capacity to fight back. So like when you are feeling depressed, one of the hardest things to do is motivate yourself to like exercise or eat healthy or whatever.
Absolutely.
Um,
And it's not always going to work. Like some people try exercising and it just does not do the trick for them. I think too many people don't give themselves enough time to
hmm,
try certain methods. They want that instant fix because they are suffering. And, it's hard to put in that time into trying new things for it to not work. But I think that a lot of the time people don't give themselves enough um, times to try with those different methods. Some holistic stuff can help.
totally. Yeah. Yeah, you got to like get your face out of the mud, and then once your face is out of the mud and you can breathe a little bit, then you can sort of like do things that will you will have a little bit more space and room to be able to do things like work out and eat healthy that will ultimately end up like impacting like mental health and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, person has attempted in the past and occasionally talks about it still, but not in a way they sound like they're planning anything again. But where do you draw the line between this is something almost everyone deals with and is comfortable to discuss versus seeking outside help for that person? So the first thing that I would say is that if somebody expresses suicidal ideation, they should seek professional help in general. I think that
Ideation,
yes,
even though, okay.
yes. If somebody expresses suicidal ideation, I would encourage them to see like even me as a coach, when somebody expresses suicidal ideation, I do encourage that they seek out like a therapist or a psychiatrist. Um, but in that same what I try to do first is I try to make sure to let them know that like uh it is very normal that they are feeling that way, and try to sort of like I know it sounds sort of weird, but like validate those feelings that like hey, like given everything that you're going through, it makes perfect sense that you would feel this way. And like I think that it would be a good idea to like seek out help. I'm still here for you, like I'm still happy to talk with you, but I also I would love to help you seek out somebody that is sort of like more professionally trained in helping people work through that, and then hopefully like they don't get a um I try to be I try to give the benefit of the doubt when it comes to therapists. I think that a lot of the issue is that therapists sort of exist in a system that makes it very hard for them to do good work. Um, but I also think that like in any job, there's going to be people that are good at their job. There are going to be like a select few people that are good at their job. There's going to be a bunch of people that are like okay at their job. And then there's going to be a select few people that are actually really bad at their job. And I think that the problem with a job like therapy is that if you are just sort of like okay at your job, people will walk away thinking like, oh, that didn't work for me, and then they
Mm.
have this sort of like bad taste of therapy in their mouth.
And it's hard for them to seek out help again.
Exhibit A, Pyro.
That's me. That happened to me.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
Mamaf, I don't know if that answers the question, but let me know. What do you think, Pyro? What do you think of that idea?
It's a tricky situation because I think I agree with you about validating their feelings, but without you don't want to make it a big deal like what my therapist did, because then they're not going to feel comfortable talking about it. And sometimes it's okay to express those feelings. You don't want to internalize it and let them grow. I think it's just important, yeah, to maybe set those boundaries, like with your friend. Like if you feel comfortable, to say like, I'm okay talking about this, but please, if it ever reaches a point where it's becoming more serious, I want to support you, but I can't do it alone. And I think it's best if you get professional help for this, just so that they know like it's okay, like if the feelings they're having are being expressed, but that if it keeps growing, that you can't be the person that they come talk to.
Yeah, honestly,
I would say.
I think that was really beautifully said. I think that if I if I came to you and was like, "Hey, you know, I'm having some suicidal ideation," uh, if you said that to me, I would feel I would feel very comforted by it. That not only are you like here to comfort and support me, but that if it does ever get worse, I know that I have somebody that will help me seek it, even if they are not able to help me themselves, they will help me seek out help that from somebody who that is able to help with that. And I think
Yeah.
that's really special. Yeah.
Hi, Mash. Welcome in.
Cool. Cool. All right. We're at about the 2 hour mark. Do you wanna wrap up, or is there anything else that you really wanted to talk about?
Um, the work thing was like the biggest thing on my mind, and I think talking about like communication in general and just like how I've been working on that, I think has been really valuable, especially for a lot of people too.
For sure.
Um, but I guess if anyone else has any more questions, or if they just want to know how I'm doing because I haven't been around, that'd be cool too.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm feel
I
pretty
I
good right now.
I selfishly wanted to ask a little bit about your art and your OC and how you're feeling about all that kind of stuff.
I finished the two that I had that you've seen. I've actually not posted them anywhere in the Discord, and I think I probably should because I do want to keep working on them. Oh, can I actually kind of talk about the 2023 art
Yeah, absolutely.
community thing we're doing?
Go
Okay.
for it. That sounds great. I honestly, that is much more in line with the kind of stuff that I thought that you were going to talk about today. But like this was great. So, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
whatever works for
yeah.
you.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess it kind of just ties into like just how I've been doing also. It's been really nice to not have commissions for a while. Like I have been kind of going back to like my mental health and not like actually taking the time on weeknights and weekends to not have other projects or important things to do like streaming or commissions and things like that. It's been really nice to just lay in bed and actually kind of be lazy, but also not lazy. Like lazy doesn't have to mean a bad thing. I'm taking care of my body and my mind,
Yeah, to
and I
actually
haven't done that before.
rest, which
Yeah,
for a lot
who
of
does that?
people like interpret as lazy, but like weirdly your body and mind actually kind of need time to rest and recover when you work really hard.
Yeah, and actually my sleep has been a lot better. I've not really had those anxiety dreams like I had for like a week and a half straight. So that's been good.
What do you think
Um,
made the difference?
uh, I think I was really stressed about the work thing happening because it was right around when I got the promotion and I had all this anxiety about all the things that I was needing to learn.
Hmm,
Um, so I think now that that's kind of evening out, I don't have that same anxiety.
makes sense.
But yeah, I've been sleeping so much better because of it.
Cool.
Um, but yeah, I I do still work, but now I'm just work on my art, but mostly just on my OC, which is something that like I've just been wanting to do for myself, not for anything else. My drive is when Worm posts giveaways, and I'm like, I want my OC to be in the giveaway. I need to finish her. Like she makes such good art, and I'm like, I want to be in this. So yeah, I've been working on that. So I gotta post them in my own Discord. And I'm like branching out and just like trying different poses and things like that. But what I'm doing for 2023, and for anyone who's not in my Discord, feel free to join. Um,
I'll get you a link.
since yeah, I don't stream anymore, but it is still a fairly active Discord. We still post art and animals and Lord of the Rings stuff, and we still hang out in voice chat every once in a while. Thank you. Oh my god. And we're doing this thing for 2023. So I don't really do like New Year's resolutions. I feel like a lot of the time, myself included, you don't commit to them enough. You might commit for like a week or two, maybe a month. Um, but I do like having goals like, what would I like to accomplish in 2023 that I didn't get to this year? And then even if I don't accomplish it, like, it's still something that I want to work on. Even if we don't get through the whole year, if I do like 6 months, I'd be pretty happy. But we're doing like a little art improvement thing. I don't know the best way to describe it,
I would
but
call it
basically
like
what we're
a
doing is
it seems like an art study calendar almost is what
yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah, so the goal is for people, for artists, and not artists, but if you just want to like be a part of it and like include references, every month we'll choose a subject or a theme or something like that to work on, and like I myself want to work on like different body parts or poses or hands or expressions or maybe like a cartoon style. Like it could even go as far as like styles and stuff, because I've been stuck with animals for a very long time. And so like drawing these OCs has been such a challenge, but I've been learning so much, and I just want to kind of keep working on that. And I like to encourage other people to kind of branch out and learn new things that they've been wanting to try also. So every month we'll pick a theme, and then people can post references, people can ask questions, people can post like tutorials and stuff, and then we just kind of focus on that subject matter and post our whips and our final piece. It doesn't even have to be a final piece, like there's no like grade at the end of it, but people can post their work, and we'll just see how everyone's doing for the month, and then we'll pick a new subject. Yeah, it's just kind of something that we can all keep talking about, and we can work together, or post a reference that we all kind of draw from or something like that. So I would love to get some more artists and non-artists to join in and participate in that. I think it'd be a lot of fun um, to try.
So I just got to say that I am unbelievably excited for this event. I think it is such a cool heckin' idea. So like what I sort of am picturing is that like each month Pyro will be like, okay, like, the community decided that we're gonna do like hand studies this month. We're gonna do lots of different drawings of hands and try to get better at drawing hands. And then I just imagine, like different artists posting their sort of like studies of hands, and then like another artist being like, oh my gosh, like I have been struggling so much with like how the heck do you get that particular like ring finger joint to look like that? My ring finger
Yeah.
joint always looks messed up. How do you get it to look like that? And then the artist is like, oh, like, do you know like that? Like I even saw this in I can't remember if it was in Pyro's Discord or somebody else's, but like Pyro would be like, do you know the blah 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 trick? And then somebody else would be like, no, like what is that? And they'd be like, oh well,
It
like
sounds familiar.
if you do like this and this, if you draw like these kinds of shapes, then it ends up making it look like what you want. And like just like learning from each other in that way seems so exciting and valuable to me.
Yeah.
And then also one of the other things that I'm selfishly really excited about, because I am not an artist, is that Pyro is like really encouraging non-artists to participate in the way of like helping to if artists are like, man, I can't find any like really good pictures of like anime hands, be like, all of my life my training has prepared me for this moment,
Let
like
me look through my waifu page.
yeah, exactly. And so just sort of like posting up all sorts of references, being able to sort of like boost up artists by saying like, wow, like I love this work that you did, this is so cool, and just sort of like getting non-artists and artists to have a little bit more intermingling and teaching them sort of
Mm.
like how to talk to each other just seems so exciting and great to me. So I'm super excited for it, and I would encourage you all to participate. I spammed the Discord link in chat if you haven't seen it already. I'll do it again just in case.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm really excited. I think probably this weekend or like halfway through next week, I'll start a poll, not a poll, but like people can start suggesting topics, and then we'll post a poll to vote on the actual subject.
Sounds really
I don't know
exciting.
how it's going to work because I want to keep it as open as possible to get a nice wide variety. Like I don't want to do just people, or just like just hands and then just feet and then just eyes. I would like to open it up to like mammals or scaly animals or forests or something like that, just so that people can really like branch out and try new things and
Mm-hmm.
then see their own interpretation. It doesn't even have to be like a from life study. It can be like an interpreted or like abstract idea. I think it would be really cool
Yeah,
just to see.
you could even have like nominations of like, everybody submits something that they would be interested in, and then like
Yeah,
you take your favorites of the nominations and put those up for a poll.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'll have to start. Well, I'll give everyone the role that's interested, and then I think the channel will be up. The channel will be open to everybody, but just for like tagging, people will have a role, and then people can start suggesting. I'm really excited to see how it turns out because I think it'll be good motivation because it's only once a month, so you can do just one thing or nothing, but you're not going to be slammed with like a day to day or week to week project.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
know that's really difficult for people to chime in on.
Yeah.
Like Arttober is so hard for me to do. I'm lucky if I get like 5 days in.
Yeah.
Really hard.
October's crazy. I mean, even for people that like, Pyro, you have a pretty active lifestyle, pretty busy lifestyle. Your plate's pretty full.
Yeah.
I feel like even for people that do not have such a full plate, drawing one thing a day that's intense.
Yeah, I know Anne did it. She did the full month, but she also did it like 3 days in advance.
Mm,
So, like by the time the last day came around, she had been done for like 4 days. So that's something I would want to do is like have all of September to like do like two drawing or one drawing every 2 days or something like that, so that I can start posting while I'm still working on them.
yeah.
But even then, I'm just so tired. And next year, I think I want to make items for everybody for Christmas, like my family members, because like shopping for people this year has been a bit hectic.
Mm,
And I would love to just like make like handmade ornaments or something like that. Or
that
like
would be cool.
like my sister asked everyone who had a pet to post pictures of their pets.
Mm.
And I realized pretty much everyone in my family has a pet or two or
Mm.
three. And so it'd be really cool to do like portraits of every pet for each of my family members or something.
Yeah, that
Like
would
really
be
nice
really cool.
portraits. I think that's gonna be what I do.
That sounds really cool. I hope
Yeah.
I hope that your family doesn't watch this and it gets spoiled.
Yeah, right. They'll forget. It's still over a year from now.
Okay. All right. Good. Good.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Any last minute questions, comments, concerns, random statements before we sort of wrap up?
From me.
Okay. Cool. Chat. Anything from you? I'll give y'all 1 minute. You ready? Set a timer for 1 minute.
And Mush, that's really cool that you did a hand study. I think that's really cool, especially with sculpting, because hands are tricky. I wouldn't mind spending a whole month doing because the hands are really interesting and complex. Sure, so it'd be fun to work with those.
Mm-hmm.
I miss you too, Mom Off.
Yeah.
I do miss streaming. I really do, and I miss streaming not because I miss like the games or anything. I miss like the interaction, and sometimes I think about streaming because like I have so many games I want to play, and I'm like I don't want to not play this if I'm going to play it on stream one day, and then I end up not streaming, and so I haven't even played the game. Like I don't want to play games by myself is what I'm getting at, and so it makes me want to do like Discord game nights or something like that.
Yeah.
But then I'm just so tired. So
yeah, I think that how do I say this? What I've sort of gotten from you is that like, why is my audio going wacky? What I've sort of gotten from you is that like, yeah, the streaming itself isn't so much of what you miss. It's the community interaction, And that's
Definitely.
why I'm so excited about this event, is because I think that this event is going to, uh, what's the word? Um, Create the opportunity for a lot more of that community interaction. Like, it just
Yeah.
gives people something to sort of like talk around, which I think will be really great for the community, so that people like Mamoff that do miss you can interact with you, like have an excuse to interact with you, instead of just like having to sort of artificially reach out and be like hello,
Hmm.
because that's hard.
Yeah.
Even as somebody who, like, I consider you a close friend, Pyro, like that is even hard for me to do with
Mm.
any of my friends, just like randomly reaching out and being like hello, I don't actually have anything to talk about, but I just want to talk to you.
No, you
um
can always do that.
I know, but it's just not easy to do. Even when you know that it's okay, even when people have really driven home that it's okay, it just is not always easy, because you're like, well, like, okay, but like, what are we actually gonna talk about?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Anyway,
That's why I like sharing cool Twitter posts with you
yep,
about sexy Zelda art.
that's my
That gives us something to talk about.
that's my shit. Uh,
Yes.
all right. With that, thank you very much, Pyro. How did you feel about this?
I had fun. I got less nervous very quickly into
Good,
it.
good.
So yeah, it just feels like we're just talking. And I personally really liked being able to have chat to like
Bounce off
talk.
of,
Yeah.
for sure.
Because I don't want I always want people to feel like they can chime in and know that they're being heard.
Hmm. I
I
think
know it
that,
can get complicated when there's like a lot of chat going on, but I think
yeah, but
we
that's
love this
not
community
that's
and
not a problem for me. I think that my I also like having chat to bounce off of. I mean, I think that the people that watch me regularly know that, like, interacting with chat is the main reason why I stream.
mm,
I think that the thing that bothers me with this type of thing is when people will stop the flow of the conversation in order to be
mm,
like, hold on, let me catch up with chat, and I hate that.
yeah.
So this felt much more organic, where like we would be talking about something and then chat was almost like a third person in the conversation that was contributing things.
Hmm.
And I love that. It's just a matter of, I don't know that all of the people that I have on will have the same sort of natural ability to naturally bring chat into the conversation, rather than
Mm.
making it feel a little stunted, if that makes sense.
You could always like set like I don't know, like a 20-minute timer or
Hmm.
somewhere around there so that you can have a good full-fledged conversation about something or about a specific topic,
Hmm.
and then as you like to say, come up for fresh air,
Yeah,
and then use that time to come back to questions so the chat's not completely overfilled, but they can still be listened to, and the questions discussed.
sure,
I think that
sure.
could work.
Cool, cool. Well, thanks for coming along with me on this inaugural episode of Mental Health Talks.
Yeah,
Um,
I was very happy to be the first one,
yeah,
and I hope the rest go just as well.
yeah. Fingers crossed. And I hope that we can sort of keep up our tradition of at least once a year just having sort of a catch up talk like this.
I love it because I feel like there's always so much to talk about between each one. Like again, like it's all about the journey for me, and so the journey is there's a lot happening.
Yeah, so much so this year that I don't think that we even covered. I think that we covered maybe a fourth of what there is to talk about with you.
Maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There's
So
there's so much that I can't even think about like what else would I want to talk about because there's a lot.
yeah,
But it's going well.
good, good. Glad to hear it. All right, Pyro, thanks very much. Chat, thanks very much. I'm actually gonna just wrap up here. So thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all next time.
Bye everyone.
Bye
I love you.
bye.
I miss you all. We'll play games one day.
One day.